pieces that she's designed. And I heard her just say when she was pointing some things out about one of her pieces, this is the focal. She said focal, and she could have said focal point, but it still meant the same, focal. I complimented her on her vocabulary because focal is has to do with the principle of design emphasis, which in 2 weeks I'm going to be teaching on. I've got a little bug in my brain that I might contact her and see if she wants to, at some point, come in and let me interview her about how she has used the elements and principles of design in her jewelry. I think that would be fun. Okay, all right. Yeah, Lily Works. Well, all done up. I took a bath and everything. Okay. Yes, I think she might enjoy it. I hated to have to leave, and I wanted to tell everybody just stay in here and look at her beautiful stuff. She's a first time seller, and this teaching that I'm going to do is going to be very, very brief. It's on visual rhythm, and you can always watch it on the replay. So if you have come in and said hello to me and want to go back to her show, it won't hurt my feelings at all. You can always catch the replay for the teaching. Doing no selling, but at 6:30, I've scheduled a pop-up called Clear Out. So things I'm using in the teaching and a whole bunch more. I've got a box back here behind me full of jewelry I haven't looked at in a long time, and I am really, really slashing prices. I'm wanting to move it out. Plus, anything that I sell for the next little while, I'm giving 10% donation to Samaritan's Purse. All sales since the hurricane. So I just tell you that to first of all, y'all, I give 10% tithes to my church, and then I'll give another 10% to Samaritan's Purse. But you know, my our churches, I don't know if y'all have been listening to all of the videos and on Facebook and whatever coming out of especially Western North Carolina about how the churches have played a part. The local churches have played a part, and my denomination is really strong in North Carolina. We've got special ministries called for disaster relief. So we're out there with our food trucks. We're out there with our shower and laundry facility stuff, and right in the thick of it. And so, anything that we pay our tithes into our church, it goes to help stuff like that. So, all right, enough said about all of that. Let's move my sign and get right into the teaching of visual rhythm. Let's go back over to my list. Last week we talked about balance, visual balance, and if you missed it, you can go back and catch the replay. We're doing rhythm today. I had advertised rhythm and proportion, but rhythm was enough on its own, but especially proportion. I'm going to cover next week. Uh, um, I want to be able to include the Greek. The golden mean. And I'm sure you've probably heard of the golden mean, but it was the Greek concept of ideal beauty, and it does play a part in design all through the ages. And there's still a lot of jewelry today you can see that uses the golden mean for its proportions. So we will look at that next week. And then the next week, I'm going to wrap up with variety, emphasis, and unity all in one, probably one class. And I am eager to get on to the next teaching, and I haven't decided yet if y'all want to send me suggestions as to what you would like to do. And along the way, I've mentioned several things that I'd like to look at, like, for instance, doing the chart comparisons of check and glass beads, rock crystal, and I was going to show you my little demo thing that I'm preparing. And so that's one thing. And but the main thing is I want to start on designers. Man, I want to, start with, I'll probably start with Caro since it's one of my favorites. But I want to run through all the major designers and work out of my collection and teach about the company and the distinctives of the design and just have fun exploring designers together. So that's another idea. Okay. All right. Rhythm, visual rhythm. I don't know if you've ever thought about the fact that jewelry design and uh, many other things, like look at this decorative plate, has used the element of, excuse me, the principle of rhythm. And you're gonna, once we get through this, you're gonna start seeing rhythm in everything around you, your clothing, your even how cars are designed, even how houses architects have designed. You're gonna see it in mass-produced images. You're gonna see it everywhere. You just never thought of it before from the standpoint of being a principle of design. That here's the definition, that indicates movement. That's the key word, movement. Rhythm is the principle of design that indicates movement. And how does it do that? By the repetition. Let's go back to my plate. That's a good place to give the basic definitions. The repetition of elements. Now, we've studied the elements, their line, shape, space, value, color, texture. So, is those elements either one or a multiple of them, several of them together, are repeated over and over again, it creates movement. Well, what do you mean move? We're looking at this plate, it's not going anywhere, it's sitting still, but what is moving? Your eye is moving. The most obvious, the one I see first is this motif. We call that a motif that is repeated over and over again around the border of this plate. And I think the reason why my eye goes there probably first is because of the sharp contrast with this dark blue and the terracotta. Anytime that there is a sharp contrast in value, it creates a focal point, okay? And so we enter the design of this plate, and right away our eye starts to move. So that's the movement. And the rhythm part is that it's according to how these motifs are placed. And so, because we're looking at the space in between, the negative space in between, that's the positive space, that's an element, negative space, positive space, negative space. That establishes a beat. That's part of the rhythm, and it can those things can be different with every piece. We're going to look at a few because there's 5 different types of visual rhythm. We're going to look at all 5. The next motif is this antelope that's in white, and it's repeated with, in essence, negative space in between the motif. And then we have that motif. In fact, this plate is full of visual rhythm. And does it not appear to be moving? It's almost like the elements are popping off of the plate. A little history. I got this plate and it was made. I was in the studio, the pottery studio in Corinth, Greece, and watched them making it. It's terracotta. They fired the plate. Well, they threw the plate on a wheel, and then they went back and put in the decorations around the edge. And then do you see that line there and there? And another set of lines there. And then you may not be able to see it, but each one of these things are outlined. That was all done just before the clay was totally dry. And then they fired it. And when it came out of the kiln, it's called greenware. And at that point, the potter went back with colored glazes and painted it. Okay, then it was fired again. And this is the result. And it is an absolute spot on example of visual rhythm in a 3D object. And another one, I'm just covering these things that aren't jewelry first so that you can begin to see that in your glass pieces, okay, your vintage and antique glass, you probably right away are aware of this, and you've probably, that's how you have identified what the pattern that helps you understand who the maker of this glass is. Well, pattern is a word we use in describing rhythm. And the pattern is this oval shape with the outline around it, but it's repeated over and over again. And without you realizing it, your eye kind of moves around, jumping back and forth along those motifs. All right, so there's quite a bit of visual rhythm involved in this piece here. Now, I'm telling you, you're going to start to see visual rhythm everywhere. You're going to start to see it everywhere. And what's the purpose of this teaching? It's just to make you further aware of or develop your appreciation for your jewelry, to understand how the designer was thinking and how they created their pieces, and to give you, again, increased vocabulary, just like the gal in Wired Weaved Uniques used the word focal. I don't know that she's where she used a vocabulary that has to do with the principle of design called emphasis. But it was a great vocabulary word, and I bet you all of you heard it and are going to remember it, because she expounded on it and said, as a designer, once you've created a focal, then all your ideas for the rest of the design kind of flow out from that. Well, that was her thinking process as a designer. That's why I would love to interview her and go over some of these other things, because I bet you she could talk about all of these and maybe didn't even realize that she could. I don't know. Maybe she's got Art Institute training and she could talk about it all better than me. But I think an interview would be fun for all of us. All right, so we've established the definition of rhythm. And y'all, I am trying to get through by 5 o'clock so that we can all raid Priscilla Nelson, who's another first time a live shower here on Lilyworks, Jewels and Light. So let's press through. If I'm talking fast, that's why. And I'm not looking. I'm so sorry, I'm not looking at chat. Okay, Jules by Bailey. Hey, thank you. And thank you for chatting. Thank you for chatting. And hence a violet. Awesome. Okay, let's keep going. All right, we established that the characteristics of rhythm is that there is a motif. Let's look at this necklace right here. There is a motif. Let me pull it up a little closer. A motif. So the motif on this is that faux pearl, but it's also the negative space in between the pearls are filled with a gold linked chain. And so it actually becomes part of the motif. We could look at the motif right there, and it's repeated over and over again. Okay. And so it creates visually a type of beat, because your eye is moving over it and kind of stopping. It happens subconsciously, it happens in a split second. You're probably not even aware that that's going on, but the designer knew if he could capture your eye and cause it to move along the design, then he's been successful. All right, that's what every designer wants to do. Okay, so let's put that back up there. So it establishes a beat that is repeated. That's part of the rhythm. In in 3 dimensions, there's another word besides motif. It's modular, and we won't be using that word modular very often, but I just wanted to bring it up. Think of modular furniture. So you've got a basic, usually kind of a square, chunky shape, and it's repeated over and over again. The pieces fit together, they're modules, but that creates a type of rhythm also. So you've got motif, and then you've got the term module. And but the main thing to remember about visual rhythm is that it creates a sense of movement. Why? Because your eye is moving along the motifs with a certain rhythm to it, a certain beat. All right. Now, 5 different types of rhythm. The first one is what we would call random rhythm, and um, let's see. This is a really good example right here. Think of lily pads in a pond. Um, lily pads in a pond. The lily pads would be the motif. They're similar in shape. Some may be larger than the others and smaller, but they're all kind of generally the same shape. But they're across the pond in random spacing. And so jewelry designers can use that same type of rhythm, visual rhythm. This is a good example. The motif in this one is going to be first, there's this larger stone that's a dark pink, okay? And you can see that boom, 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 boom. And you don't, maybe you don't realize it, but when you first looked at this, your eye starts to catch those dark pink stones, and your eye literally begin to hop around the design. The second motif is that smaller, lighter pink rhinestone. The third motif is what? What else do you see besides these round stones? Lines. Remember, rhythm can be its repetition of the elements, and line, Line, is one of the elements. So you've got wonderful, uh, random spaced, random in that some are short, some are long. They're not all the same. And so this is a great example of random rhythm. All right. And let's put that aside. And the next one is regular rhythm. That is, let's look at, well, the pearl necklace that I showed you is an example of regular rhythm. That's identical motifs that are spaced identically and repeated over and over again. Very steady, steady, steady beat. This little choker that's made up of quill and hematite beads is another example of regular rhythm. The motif is the quill, the hematite beads, the quill, the hematite beads, the quill. You've also got a pattern set up with them being parallel to each other. So that's a nice example of regular rhythm. This is a really good example here, and it really shows movement. This is a bracelet by, oh, there's a name on this bracelet. How come it's not here? Trifari. This is a crown Trifari. Isn't that gorgeous? All right. Well, what is repeated is there's a shape that's repeated, first of all, that shape of that large center stone, and it's very regular, regular space. But part of the motif is also, if I can separate a link, you've got four little small rhinestones in the corner, and that is repeated over and over again with each link. You've got these two diagonally spaced baguettes. Those are repeated over and over again. And this bracelet, I'm telling you, if you had this on, somebody's going to take a second look. And the second look is that they look at it, but they keep following that motif because it's repeated over and over again. Beautiful sense of rhythm, regular rhythm. Isn't that gorgeous? I just think Crown Safari is excellent. Okay, the next one is alternating rhythm. Now, alternating rhythm is where you've got one motif and but then a second motif comes in, alternating with it. Sometimes it's simply the changing of the placement or size of the original motif. Think of a brick pathway that is in a herringbone design. So you've got the original rectangular shape of the brick, but it's laid this way. That's the placement. The next time it's this way. So that's alternating. Okay, creates a beautiful sense of visual rhythm. But I've got just a little tiny bracelet here, delicate little thing. It's like a type of book chain, but let's start at the clasp, and we notice we've got two faux pearls, followed by a piece of natural stone, two faux pearls by a similar shape here, if not identical, stone, two faux pearls. And now we've got the same shaped stone, natural stone. These are natural stones in here, but the color is changing. The color is alternating. So now we're back to green, the orange, the blue. So this is a nice little simple example of visual rhythm with that's alternating. And then one that's a wee bit more complicated, this old brooch that is not marked on the back. I'll show this brooch again later when I do my sale starting at 6:30. But because I think it could possibly be Czech or German, but it's not marked. But the motif is right away, the first thing you notice are these little pale yellow glass stones that are imitating citrines. They're in a tear shape, and they are repeating, and that's regular, sort of regular rhythm. Then you've got the little tiny orange one that's repeated, but then as you look at it closer, you'll notice each one of these little orange ones has the petals or a motif in and of themselves. So that's a motif, and look at there, it is repeated regularly all the way around. But when you look at all the motifs, we were talking about alternating. So you've got this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Okay, so it's alternating all the way around the pen. That's a fun example. And then y'all may have seen this pen before. I've shown it before, but it's a great example of alternating rhythm. First thing you probably notice are the round shape and white color of the pearls and the smooth texture, which is another element. All three of those elements are being repeated. Round, white, which is color, and texture are repeated. Very regular rhythm, okay? But then look closer and you see at the top and the bottom, in between those pearls, are little tiny rhinestones that are all identical, but it's alternating back and forth. And just as a little freebie, when we talked about line, Line, and diagonal or zigzag lines, we said that that tends to attract the eye rather quickly because there's something genetically inbred in us down through the thousands of years that subconsciously, on a very base level, responds to anything that's pointy or jagged because that's basic instinct. Is that a weapon? Can that hurt me? And you wouldn't think you'd look at a brooch and ask yourself that question, but it did flit through your subconscious if you're normal. Okay. And then your logic kicks in. Oh no, that's just a little brooch. But the designer knew that, and you can say, well, that's a leaf pattern. That's how it would look in nature. Yes, but I'm telling you that the designer would have understood that this brooch would attract the viewer's attention by that zigzag line, and then it's almost picked up again in the use of alternating rhythm back and forth, kind of a zigzag pattern throughout this brooch. This is a wonderful example of alternating rhythm. Okay, the next one is called flowing rhythm, and we got about 5 minutes. And we got two more. This is number 4, flowing rhythm. This might be the best example, is where you've got repeating, waving lines. Line is an element, so that's the motif that's being repeated, and these little post earrings. You can see the black enamel lines really quickly. You can spot that, and they're waving. They're parallel to each other, and then the rhinestones that are set in between there are the same line in gold, but accented with this texture. Those rhinestones create a texture, so you've got waving lines of texture that are repeated. So this is a great, simple little illustration of flowing rhythm. And it's a tactic to catch your eye, the viewer's eye, and keep your eye on the piece for as long as possible. Okay, all right. And Have you ever thought of chains? This is a this is a Napier chain that I love. There's nothing like the finish of a Napier product. This thing won't ever tarnish. But the chains are a good example of flowing rhythm. And what is flowing? The use of line and the spaces in between, the negative spaces in between, are also flowing down through here. Okay, repetition, repetition. Okay, flowing rhythm. All right. All right. The last one is called progressive rhythm. Has nothing to do with politics. Okay. Sorry. I had to throw that in there. Progressive rhythm is where there's a change each time in the motif, kind of like the numerical sequence. Think x plus 1, x plus 2, x plus 3. So this little uh, small little brooch, and it has earrings to match. You'll probably see this later at 6:30. I'll bring these back. But the motif, there's several of them happening here, but the first one is the little tear shaped, and I think that's acrylic. These don't feel like glass. They could be, uh, but they just kind of feel like acrylic to me. But anyway, that's the motif. That's the original motif, which is a shape. Same shape, same shape, same shape. But what's being progressive about it is that X is the shape, but X plus 1 is the color. X plus 2, X plus 3, X plus 4. All right, nice progressive rhythm. But there's another type of rhythm that what as a review, the lines that are here that's repeated over and over again, would you say that that is what? Flowing? Flowing rhythm? So it's got two types of rhythm operating in it. And I've just noticed too, that little tear shape is the outline of the earring itself is repeated. That's quite nice. All right, that is progressive rhythm. I got one more to show, and that's a little bangle bracelet's a good example. This is a little clamper. Gold tone, these are like supposed to be like faux agates, like Scottish agates, but they're not. They're just enameling. But you've got the shape is the motif. There's the motif right there, and that motif is repeated over and over again. But it changes each time because of what? The color. The color makes it the x plus 1, x plus 2. So alternating rhythm. All right. Review, Greek key that's repeated over and over again, and it's line that's being repeated over and over again. I'd say this is regular rhythm. You might could say it's flowing, but I think it's more regular rhythm. Beautiful little clamper silver tone bracelet. Okay, all right. One last thing. Nettie Rosenberg. We can't end without looking at my favorite butterfly pen by Nettie Rosenstein. And it's flowing rhythm again. You've got this same lines here in the wings and in the antenna, and they are flowing. In fact, the entire contour line work of this piece is flowing. This is such a good design. I think if we just looked at name designers' pieces, we would really see these principles being used. And I may do a wrap up at the end of all this and only look at famous designers who really knew what they were doing with the elements and principles of design. Okay, it is 5 o'clock. I want to raid Priscilla Nelson. Thank all of you that were here. Let me look down through here. All of you, thank you for popping in to say hello to me. And yes, Melody's tell you can join in the chat and see previous sessions. Thank you, Melody. And you can, if you missed this one, go back and watch the replay. And last week, the one on balance. See you next week for proportions, the golden. And let's raid Miss Priscilla and give and love up on her. Okay. All right. Bye.